Welcome back, Twisters. Today's a special episode in that I'm joined by a special guest. Now, about a week ago, I was featured on a YouTube channel called the Blue Note Fan Report, which of course covers the St. Louis Blues. Now, the reason why he and I collaborated on this video was because we have some rich playoff history, and of course, there was a series last year between the Blues and my San Jose Sharks, something about a hand pass and, the Blues winning the Stanley Cup. But yeah, we decided to continue this conversation on my channel and chat a little bit about what it's like watching hockey in non-traditional markets. Go over to the Blue Note Fan Report and check out his channel because he has other special guests, and it'd be awesome to see some cross-channel support from you guys. And now, let's go ahead and get started with Guy Bensing of the Blue Note Fan Report. Guy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what the Blue Note Fan Report is all about.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me on Twister Mr. Hockey. It's a really pleasure to be here with you for this second edition. The Blue Note Fan Report I started about 2 years ago. Actually, I started it as therapy, just ranting about the Blues before the game, and it kind of morphed into this thing where I started talking about the Blues games, talking about their fans. I have 3 segments. I call it About the Fan. I have a fan of the game, a pet of the game, and a tattoo of the game. And I kind of just, wanted to get more contact with the fans. Me living in Hawaii, I don't get to see Blues as much as, and meet people as much as I can. I meet some through the groups and Facebook and that, but I wanted to do a little more. So my show is more like a different type of pregame show.
Got it. Now, speaking of these tattoos that you've seen, what would be kind of the craziest one that has been showcased on your show?
Oh, I've had a few of them. There was one that was Alexander Steen's skull with on a guy's arm. It's Steen's skull. You can tell from the missing teeth. A really good one. And then I've had a few that are just really innate. That started because I seen a lady with a mandala type Blues tattoo, and that's why I started this. And I've seen a few just with skulls and with the arch put in there. Now I'm starting to get some of the Stanley Cup ones.
Yeah, I imagine so, and that's something that I would do to myself too if we're ever to win a Stanley Cup. But of course, you guys were the next ones in line, so we got to still wait our turn. So for now, I'm just going to probably stick with this one, and then who knows, maybe a few years from now, hopefully before I'm rolling over in my grave, I'll have a reason to put a Stanley Cup on my body. I mean, you guys were still having a really good season in defense of the Stanley Cup. You were basically still in first in the Central Division. So can you kind of give me what the fans' pulse was like then when the league actually put things on hold?
So there were 2 pulses that I could feel. One of them was this one of great excitement that we have this amazing team that wasn't a one-hit wonder that can come back and repeat and really show people that we were the team. We were one of the best 2 teams in the league last year. And then there was this other sense of dread with as good as the Avalanche were playing right now. They have a game in hand. They're 2 points behind us. At one point, they had 3 games in hand, and they were only 4 points behind us. So it was kind of scary, but they were losing those game in hands. And that's the great thing about the game in hand, is you got to win them.
Very true. I did see the Avs in person right before the league suspended operations, and I mean, they just were fire. I mean, that team, it was interesting because they were kind of critiqued for not being a deep enough team going into the playoffs last year and then this season. And then, I mean, that's one reason why they were able to keep pace with my Sharks for 7 games right there. They actually, I think, outplayed us. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about the 2019 series between the Sharks and the Blues. Now, from what you told me, you wanted to discuss a little bit about, well, Game 4, how the Blues were able to somehow keep the puck out of the net pretty well. Game 5, when they just absolutely dominated the shot clock. And maybe a note or two about something called a hand pass. What stands out to you most about that series?
Okay, so prior to that series, I have a friend, Mike Dante, and we do what you and me are doing. He comes on and we kind of go over things. And he had asked me what my prediction was, and I had said that the irony between 2016 and 2019 was so thick, but in reverse, that I thought the Blues were going to win in 6, and that they were going to win the opposite way the games went. Right? So in 2016, St. Louis won the first one, San Jose won games 2 and 3, St. Louis won game 4, and then San Jose wins games 5 and 6. And it was looking like that's what was going to happen up until overtime in game 3, when what I call, when I told you this, you kind of laughed out of here. I think it's the greatest play in Blues history is the San Jose's hand pass. And if you want me to go into it, I will. Is that okay?
Oh, please, by all means. I mean, I know what it was like from my side of things. I was like, oh, no, we're up in the series, I guess. But yeah, as you're going to probably share, the Blues were able to use that as a point of motivation.
If you remember right after that game, I mean, you got Jordan Bennington. He was out of his mind. He's slamming the stick into the glass. Pietrangelo is screaming at the top of his lung. They were upset. That is a play that can destroy a team. And Coach Berube, who I got to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of, and on my show I call him Booberry a lot, he went into that locker room and told every single player, do not say a word about the hand pass. Well, you know what? How many coaches have gone and done that and then go out to the podium and bitch about it? It happens all the time. Berube goes out to the podium and all the guys are watching. He gets the very first question about the hand pass and he says, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm ready to talk about game 4. That right there was the tone setter. That was the moment that every Blue believed 1 billion% in Berube and what he was preaching. That was the moment that they came together. That was the moment that they decided nothing was going to get in their way, including horrible refereeing all over the place, on every side. I mean, well, sometimes you can say the old adage, the refereeing's great when both sides are complaining. Right? This was a time when the refereeing was horrible and both sides were still complaining.
Well, certainly. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit between us in that, I found that the Blues were able to take certain liberties on the Sharks. And if you just look at the injury report for Game 6, that kind of says enough right there. But, yeah, I mean, it's not that we didn't get any favorable calls our way in the playoffs. It's what you're saying there that, there were moments where there was just a lack of awareness by the officiating crews. Yeah.
You brought up, and I hope I'm not bringing this up earlier, you had sent me a file of some of those hits that you were, concerned about. And I took a really good look at them. Of those hits, the one that I, as a Blues fan, would be upset with the most would have been the Pietrangelo and the extra elbow. I watched the play. You can see him hit Pavelski, and then just after he hits him, you can see him throw that elbow up, and and that's, and you never want to see someone do that. But, and this is a but for everything. Anytime you see something like that, and the referee who's right there doesn't do anything, I'm wondering if that, and I say this in a tongue-in-cheek way, might have been a deserved elbow. There's some chirping going on out there. And I remember a poll either last year or a couple of years ago where who's one of the worst chirpers, and I remember seeing Pavelski's name on it somewhere. But all the other hits that you sent me, the other two, the one on Hurdle, and I forget who the other one was on, they just seemed like they were hockey plays gone wrong. And I'll be honest with that. If the plays had been in reverse and I sat and watched them with a disconcerting eye, that's the way I'd have seen them. And I tried to do that. I tried to look at them with a disconcerting eye.
I looked at those hits again too, just before we spoke, and yeah, the Sammy Blais hit on Justin Braun in Game 3, I've seen that hit before. I think that's kind of one of those ones where, with the speed of the game and kind of just how Justin Braun's body was kind of just in a whole sort of turning motion, I think that that's one of those ones where maybe it's really true that Blay didn't have any sort of way to, make an adjustment on that. So I guess I'm probably not as curmudgeon-y, I guess, with that one. The Bortuzzo one is one that I personally, I think out of those three is maybe the worst, in that with that hit, it happened right at center ice, first of all. And second of all, it's the same hit that Joe Thornton threw in the Vegas series, and he got a game for it. So what happened as a result of this, I don't think there was a penalty, but Bortuzzo didn't get his play was reviewed, but the thing is that Hertl was out for that game. I mean, there's no way in hell that he would have been able to go for game 6. So that's where probably my gears get grinded the most.
Yeah, so I looked at that, and I tried to see if there was something extra in that play, and you can actually see Hertl, and I kind of tried to slow it down because the clips I got were all like really fast clips and didn't have a good look at it. It looks like Hertl may have, after the initial hit, kind of dropped down to where it was a continuation of the hit. You know what I'm saying? That has, I'm not sure if it was Bortuzzo. I thought it was Bozak, but I could be wrong. But as he goes through, he makes that hit, and his Hertl's going down. The continuation of the hit is where his head gets into it. It didn't seem like an intent hit. It did seem, he did hit him from behind, or what they call the blindside hit, but it wasn't. It looked like he was trying to glance him off the puck, and his body got too, the judgment was off. So that's what I thought on that one. And could it have been a game? Maybe. I don't really know. And this is probably a subject for an entire 2-hour show, what they need to do to fix officiating. I think they need a third party in player safety, and they need a third party officiating evaluation team that just sits down, looks at the rule book, and then reevaluates officials that way and teaches officials that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, even just in our conversation here, it seems like you and I are seeing the play differently. Not that I'm correct and you're not, or vice versa. It's more like we're looking at different elements of the play because so much goes into those individual split-second moments.
Right, and it's perspective. It really is. You're going to look at every game that you see with teal-colored glasses, where I'm going to look at every game I see with blue-colored glasses. And you know what? There are times where I watch other games that I'm looking with blue-colored glasses. There was, the finals, the way everyone complained about the trip in Game 5. But what everybody forgets is that earlier in that game, Steen was on a power play, had his skates absolutely swept out. I mean, a stick coming out like this from under him that wasn't called. That was a definition of trip, a heck of a lot more than the Bozak one was. Bozak one was a guy falling over his stick backwards. That wasn't a trip in my eyes. But again, I see it with blue-colored glasses.
Now, later in the series, I was curious to kind of get your thoughts on Game 5, because to me, that's just something that I forgot as soon as it started, just because of how horrific it was. What the hell happened in Game 5? I mean, how were the Blues able just to jump on the Sharks like that?
So this is what the Blues did all series long. It wasn't one game. They didn't play one game at a time. They played one series at a time. And in the playoffs, when you play a team, a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 7, everything that happens in each game multiplies or brings itself into the next game. By the time it got to Game 5, all that hitting took its toll on an older, more seasoned team than it would have a younger team. And that's the reason the Blues won the playoffs. They didn't play a very fast. If they'd have played the Avalanche in the Western Conference Finals, I don't know if we go to the finals. I mean, you look at the end of Game 5 and the end of Game 6, you look at the Sharks bench, you and me could have laid on that bench and no Sharks player would have touched us. So, I mean, that had a lot to do with it. And then the decision from a few players that were injured to play when they probably shouldn't have, that probably hurt you.
I definitely agree with what you're saying about how the Blues, they initiated that physicality early on in the series, and the Sharks, I mean, like the Blues, the Sharks had played a lot of hockey before this series, but when you're playing a team like Vegas who hits anything that moves, and then you're playing against Colorado who skates faster than you, I mean, you're pretty worn out going into the next series. So I'm not saying that that excuses the Sharks' defeat by any means, but the thing is that the Blues were the aggressors, and even though they lost the first game, they were still playing the kind of the long game in that series by actually trying to wear the team down over time.
Yeah, and that's what and in this day and age, unless you're going to sweep somebody, that's exactly what you need to do. And this is just what it is. And this is one of the things that happens that's the difference between the regular season and the postseason. A lot of teams that come into the regular postseason that we're comfortably in are playing their style of hockey and they don't change. And that's why you had all 4 of the first round seeds knocked out, because not one of them changed their style when they needed to at the beginning of the series.
Yeah, they were going up against teams that had to scratch and claw their way just to make a wild card. The Avalanche, they got in, and the Flames had kind of coasted, their way into the playoffs. Just as an example from the Pacific Division, and obviously Columbus and Tampa. That was a clear-cut example right there too.
Well, Tampa got up 3-0 going into the second, and they put it's like that team figured out when they were up 3-0, we're winning the cup, we don't have to play hard, take it easy, and they never recovered from that.
But anyway, we only have so much time here, so I wanted to kind of transition back to this year and just kind of like watching hockey in general. So with the Blues, they have in their offseason not too many players who are RFAs or UFAs, but of course the big name there is Alex Pietrangelo. So with Pietrangelo being the captain and a long-term Blue, what do you think his future is with the Blues, and how do you think that has been shaped by signing defensemen like Scandella most recently, Falk before the season started?
Yeah, I've been giving a lot of thought to this, and I recently did an interview with Jim Thomas from the Post-Dispatch, and when we talked about this, he thought that maybe some of these early signings were to set up that money for Pietrangelo. And I thought, okay, but now you look at the salary cap, we only got $2.5 million left. And if you thought the salary cap was going to be the 84 to 88 that the league had said, I don't know. The only thing that I think the league could do, they could work with the Players Association and say, okay, we'll go ahead and we're going to bump the cap up for next season to, say, 86, come in the middle of that thing. But in order to do that, we need to take away a little bit of that 60. We need to make it a 60-40 cut. So we need to take a little more of the money that you're normally getting so we can do this. And I think that Donald Freer may go for that. Otherwise, they're going to keep the salary cap the same or lower it, and that could hurt hockey in general.
Certainly. I mean, it's only going to make the team's decisions who are strapped for cap much more difficult. You might have to actually see a veteran player go a little bit sooner than desired. I'm looking at my Sharks too. I mean, looking at how we could possibly, bring back a guy like Brendan Dillon now with no cap going up. It seems like that won't be necessarily an option. Well,
I mean, it comes down to this. Pietrangelo's going to want $2.5 million more than he's making now. And in order to do that, the $2.5 million we got left doesn't cover it. We've got to cut $5 million out of the cap. And you can either do it by cutting somebody or trading somebody. And I would be really upset if they traded Allen and brought Huso up. And if we don't get a chance to defend, and they did that, because I don't think Huso is half the goalie that Allen is, and when Allen goes somewhere else, he's going to stick it in the Blues' rear end.
Definitely so. Anyway, you guys are playing in the Winter Classic next year. You're going to Target Field to play the Minnesota Wild. And the reason why I wanted to ask you about this is because I myself am very curious to see what the jerseys are going to look like for those games. The Minnesota Wild, I think, have maybe the best home uniforms in the NHL right now with the Adidas, with the cream stripe across the middle. The Blues are no slouch either, and I'm a big fan of their Winter Classic jersey from a couple seasons ago. Is there any sort of design that you want to see the Blues unveil for such an awesome occasion?
Yeah, I thought about this a little bit. So the Minnesota Wild are not part of the North Stars, so they can't really go back and use that old type jersey. So they can't go back more than like 10, 15 years to use a jersey. They can't go all the way back. So if they wanted to use a design like a college design or something like that, I'd like that. But I would really like to see the Blues go back to that simple white jersey, kind of like something like I'm wearing, right? But please stay away from the ugly type jerseys they used in this year's Winter Classic. Those things were horrendous.
What do you think the fan response would be if the Blues were to actually issue in Adidas the promotional jersey back from the late 1990s with the trumpets on it?
I would absolutely love it. I seen the show you did where you were bringing up worst jerseys, and you brought up I think you brought up the St. Louis jersey just before this one, where they had the red in the outline of the note, and you didn't know why they brought the red in. The red actually simplify the city. It symbols the city. Our flag is red, right? It's the leader floor in a red background. So the red brought the city of St. Louis into the design of the Blues. And it also incorporated the connection between the Cardinals and the Blues. So that's why I like it. I know we call it lovingly and sometimes disgustingly the clown jersey, but I thought for that period, it really did raise that. And when you see Brett Hull wearing that jersey flying down, and that's the jersey that Wayne Gretzky wore, yeah, I want that one.
Anyway, just lastly, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about watching hockey in Hawaii. First of all, how long have you been out there? I know that you grew up in the St. Louis area, so what's it like being, somewhere so far away from an actual NHL arena in the first place, and being so passionate about a team where you're not necessarily surrounded by a lot of people who are watching the sport at all?
Oh man, that's a great question. So I've been in Hawaii almost 16 years. I was in the United States Navy. I had retired. This was my last duty station, and ended up staying here due to job situations and things like that. I've been a Blues fan since the early 70s, since that I can remember. I'm 51 years old, so I'm right when they were born, so I'm right in that era. And I just remember, being at sea, reading the little telexes about what was going on. Here, you have a lot of expats here, you have a lot of the military, so you have a lot of pick and choose. It's hard to find hockey. Most places you go, you say hockey and they look at you with a funny look. I get the NHL package so I can see it here. Unfortunately, when we play the West Coast teams, the Ducks or the Kings, I got to watch their announcers. But I have about 7 or 8 fans that are local here, and then I have a few. Actually, I'm glad you said this. I want to say a quick shout out to Heidi and Haley. They are 2 friends of mine that I've met through work that are big Sharks fans. They have this house is your Sharks house on their door. Really big Sharks fans. I want to say hi to both of you. And I have one other person. Oh, and to hi to Justina, who lives in Philadelphia but likes the Sharks and the Ducks. So I wanted to say hi to those fans of mine, just to let them know that I wasn't forgetting about them on this episode.
Well, always good knowing about more fans who are in the greater Sharks territory, as I'd like to say. Anyway, Guy, it's been awesome having you here on the show. I hope we have a chance to do this again soon. Who knows, maybe our teams will meet again in the playoffs in the near future. I mean, there's a lot riding on the Sharks, just to get back to that point. But yeah, it's been terrific having you on here, and I hope that we get to watch some hockey, when we wake up tomorrow, really. That's about as urgent as my needs are to get back to that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's been a thrill, Nick, doing these with you. I know we talked offline. I hope we can continue doing these on a monthly or semi-monthly basis on each other's channel. It's fun to talk and hear the game from somebody else's perspective, right? I love hearing how you thought about the 2016 series, and I'm pretty sure you loved how I felt hearing about the 2019 series between us. And it just gives everyone a much better understanding of the game we love and the teams we love and the things we love. So I guess, Nick, this is aloha. And to all my fans, I'll see you on another Twisted Wrister Hockey. Aloha.
All right, Twisters. Well, that's going to do it for this show. Thank you so much, Guy, for appearing and giving us a perspective that we don't always get to consider, right? That of the fans of the other team. And it's great because it helps build out the community of fans of hockey on YouTube and outside of that on social media and whatnot. Anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed the show. Be sure to check out the Blue Note Fan Report on YouTube, also on Twitter, Facebook, and all that good stuff. I will see you guys again real soon.